While I was 8,000 miles away, building a bridge for strangers, my own parents were back home, selling the only thing I ever truly loved, and they forged my name to do it. Before this story goes any further, take 1 second to subscribe, because what happened next will remind you exactly why you should never mistake a quiet woman for a weak one. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and imagine this. You are standing on a bridge in Portugal. Hard hat on, clipboard in hand, doing the work you have spent your entire life building toward. And somewhere back home, in a quiet little county recorder's office, your signature is being pressed into a document you never touched. Your grandfather's house. The house with the green door. The porch swing carved from oak. The kitchen that still smelled like sawdust and old coffee no matter how many times you scrubbed it. Gone. Not stolen in the night. Not taken by a stranger. Handed away. By the very people who raised you. My name is Brenna. And this is the story of how I lost everything I loved, and used nothing but a folder of documents to take it all back. I am a structural engineer. People assume that means I am cold, calculated, that I do not feel things deeply. They are wrong. I just trust things that hold weight. Steel holds weight. Concrete holds weight. A handshake from the right person holds weight. My grandfather, Walter, he held weight. He bought that little clapboard house on Mill Road in 1971. 2 bedrooms. A deep front porch. A kitchen built by his own hands. He spent 50 years making it exactly right. Not perfect by anyone else's standard. Perfect by his. He taught me how to read a level before I could read a clock. He taught me that a beam carries load, and a person carries promises. The summer I graduated, he pressed a brass key into my palm, folded my fingers over it slowly, and looked me in the eye. A house, he said, is just a promise you keep to yourself. I kept that key on my keyring for 11 years. I keep it there still. When Walter passed at 84, the grief was quiet. Heavy. The kind that sits in your chest like wet concrete that never quite dries. A week after the funeral, I sat in a lawyer's office. Harold Brandt. Paneled walls. Dim light. He slid a folder across the desk and used words I had heard before but never truly heard. Irrevocable trust. Successor trustee. Beneficiary. I signed where he pointed. I was exhausted. I was grieving. I filed the folder in a drawer and went back to work. Because work was the one thing that never asked me how I was holding up. That was my first mistake. And my mother, Diane, she was already watching the house the way a person watches something they believe belongs to them. She had said it at the funeral. Out loud. In the receiving line where I could hear every word. That was Daddy's house, she told my aunt, pressing a tissue to her eyes. It should have come to me. I let it go. I told myself grief makes people say things. I was wrong about that too. My brother Trent was 29 and had never once let a consequence catch up with him. My father Roger kept the peace the way men like him always do, by making sure I never needed anything so he never had to give it. Brenna is fine, he would say, waving me off like a settled bill. And I was fine. I had built that reputation myself. Steady job. Paid off car. Quiet life. They looked at me and saw not a person, but a resource that had not yet been tapped. And the whole time, my mother was looking at the one thing I loved, and counting the rooms. The project came in March. A cable-stayed bridge retrofit outside Lisbon, Portugal. 11 weeks on site. The kind of assignment that makes a career. I said yes before my boss finished the sentence. The week before I flew out, I did what I always did. I made everyone else's life easier. Bills on autopay. Water shut-off location written on a sticky note on the fridge. Alarm code left with my father. Spare key handed to my mother with a hug at the front door. She walked through the house that afternoon running her hand along the banister Walter had sanded by hand. Slow. Deliberate. Like she was memorizing it. Don't you worry about a thing, she told me. We will take such good care of it. I was touched. I actually felt something warm. I flew across an ocean, proud of myself for being so easy to love. They did not need the water shut-off location. They needed the deed, and they already knew exactly where it was. 3 days before I left, my mother had asked too casually, where Walter's house papers were kept. I told her Brant had the originals. She nodded like it didn't matter. Then Trent, who never called me, wanted to talk about family finances. I was slammed. I said we'd talk when I got back. He went quiet in a way I should have recognized. And a week after I landed in Lisbon, his social media lit up with photos of a resort in the Maldives. Overwater bungalows. A private chef. My brother, who hadn't had a job in 7 months, captioning photos with big things coming. I frowned at my phone in a hotel room that smelled like the sea, and then a colleague called me back to the deck, and I forgot the question entirely. Week 6, I called home off schedule. A permit delay had freed my evening. My mother picked up on the 9th ring. Breathless. Voices in the background. "Now's not great, honey," she said. I asked who was over. She said it was about the yard. That they were handling it. That phrase again. Handling it. In my family, "we are handling it" had only ever meant one thing. A decision I was not invited to. I asked flat out if everything was okay with the house. The pause that followed. I could have driven a truck through it. "Everything is wonderful," she said. "Too bright. Too fast. Focus on your bridge." Then she hung up. I stood on my hotel balcony with the phone still warm against my ear, and that old engineer's instinct crept up my spine. The one that says a number doesn't add up and you had better find out why before something falls. I texted Trent. Nothing. I texted my father. Nothing. And then 2 days later, my neighbor Cora, a retired schoolteacher who had watched me grow up on that street, sent me a photo. 3 words underneath it. "Is this real?" I was standing in a hotel coffee line when I opened it. The cup never made it to my mouth. There was my house. White clapboard. Green door. Walter's swing just barely visible on the porch. And driven into the lawn, right where my grandfather used to grow tomatoes, was a real estate sign. Professional. Glossy. With a bright red rider bolted across the top. Sold. Not for sale. Not coming soon. Sold. I read it 3 times. I typed back to Cora with hands that had stopped feeling like mine. "I'm in Portugal. I didn't list it. Are you sure that's my house?" Her reply came fast. "Honey, the moving truck was here Saturday. Your mother was directing it." A moving truck. My things. My grandfather's things. The level he taught me to read. The cabinets he built by hand. Gone, into a truck, while a stranger's sign claimed the yard. I want to tell you I screamed. I didn't. Something in me went very still. Very quiet. The way it does on a job site the second before everyone realizes the load is wrong. I set the coffee down. I walked back to my room. I opened my laptop. Because whatever this was, it had left a paper trail. And paper trails are the one language my family never learned to speak. I knew how to speak it fluently. I called my mother first. Some childish part of me still wanted there to be an explanation. She answered on the second ring. Eager. "Brenna, how is Lisbon?" Like nothing. Like the world had not tilted. I kept my voice very even. "Mom, why is there a sold sign on Mill Road?" The silence had texture. Then she laughed. Light and brittle like a wine glass tapping the edge of a counter. "Oh, that. We meant to tell you. It all just happened so fast." So fast. 11 weeks of "we are handling it," and it all happened so fast. "Who signed the sale?" I asked. She deflected. The market was perfect. The family needed this. She had started to say something about Trent, then caught herself. "You were never even there," she said finally. "That house was just sitting empty." And then she said it. The thing she had been rehearsing since the funeral. The thing she truly believed with every fiber of herself. "It should have come to me anyway, Brenna. I'm just taking back what was mine." I didn't argue. Arguing with my mother had never moved a single inch of ground in my entire life. Instead, I said, calm as a closing door, "Okay, Mom. Enjoy the trip." And I hung up. And I opened the county recorder's public portal. And I started to read. The parcel number loaded instantly. I had it memorized since the day Walter walked me through it. And there it was. A warranty deed. Recorded 6 weeks earlier. Transferring the Mill Road property to a couple named Prescott. Grantor. Brenna L. Mayers. My name. My house. A sale I had never heard of. Signed by a woman who was asleep in a Lisbon hotel at the time. I read it 4 times. Each time, the same impossible sentence stared back at me. So either I was losing my mind, or someone had pressed my name onto a document I never touched. I looked at the closing date. April 19th. On April 19th, I had been standing on a bridge deck outside Lisbon in a hard hat with 30 witnesses and a time-stamped photo of myself holding a tension gauge. I had not signed anything in Portugal except a hotel folio and a load certificate. The signature on that deed, the one that read Brenna Elma Mayers in a looping hand that was not mine, was a lie pressed into the public record. Forgery. The word arrived quietly, completely, the way the right answer always does. And then I looked at the notary block. Every deed needs one. A notary public who swears that the person signing is who they say they are. The stamp belonged to a notary commissioned right there in our county. The name under the seal. Renee Calloway. My cousin Renee. Diane's niece. 41 years old. Perpetually one missed paycheck from disaster. She had gotten her notary commission 2 years ago and never seemed to use it. She had sworn under her official seal that she watched me sign a document I was 8,000 miles away from. I didn't feel rage yet. Rage takes energy. I needed all of mine for the work. I felt something flatter. Harder. Like a beam locking into place. I requested a certified copy of the deed, paid the fee, and I waited. Because a screenshot is an accusation. A certified document is a weapon. And I was done bringing my voice to a fight my family had already turned into paper. 12 more days on the bridge. I stayed. I signed the load certificate. I did the work I had promised to do. And while the cables held tension in the Portuguese morning air, I built a case from 8 time zones away. The certified copy arrived at my hotel with the county seal embossed on every page. I laid it flat on the desk under the lamp. And I made myself look at the signature line. Brenna L. Mayers. In someone's careful forgery of my hand. Whoever did it had studied me. The B was close. But the flat-topped R I make, wrong. I have signed my name on 10,000 engineering drawings. I know my hand the way I know my own face. This was a stranger wearing it. I opened my passport beside the deed. Lisbon entry stamp. March 11th. No exit until June. I laid my site badge log beside that. April 19th. First scan, 6:47 in the morning. Last scan, 7:12 at night. Portugal. 3 pieces of paper. Side by side. Under a hotel lamp. Telling one clean story a child could follow. I photographed all 3 together, timestamped, emailed them to 2 accounts. Then I called Harold Brandt. He remembered me before I finished my name. Walter's granddaughter, he said softly. The engineer. He talked about you constantly. I told him everything in order. The sold sign. The recorded deed. The forged signature. Renee's stamp. My passport. He was quiet for a moment. And when he spoke, his voice had sharpened. Brenna, he said, do you remember what you signed in my office after the funeral? I admitted I hadn't read it. I had been a mess. He didn't scold me. Your grandfather didn't leave you that house in his will, he said. He put it in an irrevocable trust 3 years before he died. I sat down slowly. What does that mean for the sale? It means, Brandt said, that your parents sold something they never owned. The house was never theirs. It was never even yours to sell outright. It belongs to the trust. You control the trust. Whatever they signed as people with absolutely no authority over that property at all. I thought of Walter on the porch swing in the last summer of his life. The oak warm beneath us. WH 1971 catching the evening light. He had known. He had sat in this very lawyer's office while my mother thought he was just a stubborn old man with no faith in banks, and he had quietly made it impossible for her to do exactly what she had now done. He had built a fence she couldn't climb. And she had walked straight into it. There's more, Brandt said. Your grandfather included a protective clause. A forfeiture provision. Any beneficiary who tried to take trust property through fraud would forfeit every cent of their own inheritance. My mother, my brother Trent, each set to receive close to $40,000. By forging that deed, they had triggered the very trap Walter built to stop them. I listened to all of it without saying a word. When Brant finished, he asked what I wanted to do. I looked out at the Lisbon dock. I don't want to fight them, I said. I want to file. I landed 12 days later. Signed the bridge off clean. Drove straight from the airport to Mill Road. The sign was still there. Sold. The Red Ryder weathered now. A dumpster in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see Walter's kitchen had been gutted. Cabinets ripped out. Drywall dust where the sawdust smell used to live. The Prescotts already remaking the house I loved into something they had paid for in good faith. But the porch swing. It was still there. WH 1971. Swaying gently. The one thing they hadn't gotten around to throwing away. I sat in my car across the street for a long time. Then I took out the brass key. Walked up to the green door. Turned it in the lock. It still fit. My grandfather's lock. Installed in 1971. Still turning for his key. I could have walked in. Instead, I turned it back. Slid the key into my coat pocket. Not yet. Walking in now would be the dramatic thing. The thing my mother would do. I was going to do the patient thing. I drove to a hotel by the highway, spread my documents across the bed, and called Harold Brant. I'm home, I said. Let's file. I knocked on my parents' door that Friday evening. My mother's face did something complicated when she saw me. Delight, then calculation, then a careful, practiced welcome. Trent was on the couch, tanned from the Maldives, scrolling through his phone without looking up. My father sat in his recliner like a man who had already won. They had sold my house, funded a vacation, settled in to enjoy the spoils, and the only thing that could ruin it had just walked through the door, and they still thought I was the daughter who never caused problems. My mother fussed about coffee. My father asked about the bridge. And then I asked quietly, who signed my house away? The room cooled. My mother started her speech. The market. The timing. The family needing this. I let her run out. And then my father, 62 years old, leaned back in his chair, spatula in hand, with that little curl at the corner of his mouth, and said the sentence he will regret for the rest of his life. Your house paid for the trip, sweetheart. He said it like he was tipping a waiter. Like generosity. Trent snorted from the couch without looking up. My mother glanced away. And I smiled. A real one. Small and certain. Because my father had just confessed, in front of 3 witnesses, that he knew exactly whose house it was. And sold it anyway. I didn't say what I knew. Not yet. I just let him smirk at a fire he couldn't see. Is that right? I said mildly. And I drove away while they were still congratulating themselves. Before I filed a single document that would land on innocent people like a falling beam, I knocked on the door of my own former home. The Prescotts answered together. A nurse and a high school teacher who had scraped together everything they had for a first house and spent it on a beautiful lie. I watched the wife's face go from polite to pale as I explained gently, certified deed in hand, what had happened. That the people who sold them the house had never owned it. That the signature was forged. That a notice was about to appear on the title. We have title insurance, her husband said, gripping the doorframe. Good, I told him. You're going to need it. And it is going to protect you. This is not your fault. You did everything right. The people who lied to you are the ones who will pay. I left them both lawyers' numbers. Then Brant filed the lease pendants that afternoon. One document. Quietly stamped into the county record. And the whole scheme stopped moving. The family meeting my mother called for Sunday was supposed to be a trap. She summoned the extended family like a jury. Aunts. An uncle. Cousins. Renee in the corner looking like she hadn't slept in a month. Lemon bars on the table. Lemonade in a pitcher. My father at the grill in his good apron, performing normalcy. And there, at the edge of the patio, Walter's swing. 1971. Swaying empty in the breeze like it was saving a seat. The Prescotts arrived at 3 o'clock as I had asked. Stood quietly near the gate. The nurse holding her husband's hand. My mother's smile flickered. I set my folder on the picnic table. Closed. Sat down. Accepted a glass of lemonade I didn't drink. My father turned from the grill, smirk already warming up. Glad you came to your senses, he said. I let him think it. My mother opened the way she always does. Standing at the head of the table like a chairwoman. Addressing the yard more than me. Families make hard choices. Brenna doesn't understand. It was a misunderstanding about a house. Then she said it again to the assembled crowd. The line she truly believed. It should have come to me. I only took back what was mine. My father, emboldened, leaned on the table and repeated his favorite sentence for the room like an announcement. The house paid for the trip. Brenna's done fine for herself. She didn't need it. We did. Trent added from his lawn chair, sunglasses on, not even bothering to look up. It's just a house. I let all of it land. I let the aunts murmur. Let the uncle frown. Let the whole jury get the full family version of events. Then I opened the folder. The yard went quiet at the small, ordinary sound of a cardboard cover lifting. Funny, the things that silence a room. Not a shout. A folder. I laid the documents out one at a time. Face up. The way a detective would. This is the deed that sold the house, I said. Recorded April 19th. Down went the next page. This is the signature on it. Supposedly mine. Down went a stack of 15 real samples. And these are actually mine. The forensic examiner says the signature on that deed was written by someone else entirely. My mother's mouth opened. I kept going. Calm as still water. This is the notary stamp. Swearing I signed in person, in this county, on April 19th. Down went the passport. This is my passport. I entered Lisbon, Portugal on March 11th. I did not leave until June. Down went the badge log. This says I scanned onto a bridge in Portugal at 6:47 that morning. I looked up at Renee in the corner. She had gone the color of ash. There is no entry in your notary journal for that date, Renee. The law says there has to be. There isn't one. Nobody moved. My father's smirk had curdled into something stiff and unrecognizable. There was also a power of attorney, I continued. Supposedly signed by me, letting Dad act on my behalf. Also forged. I folded my hands on the table. So we have two forged documents. A false notarization. And a sale of a house none of you ever owned. I looked at my mother. Because it was never yours. It was in Grandpa's trust. I am the trustee. My mother's composure broke first. Not into tears. Into fury. The real thing. The thing that had lived under the performance her entire life, finally showing its face. How can you just sit there? She cried, half rising, lemonade sloshing across the table. We are your family. How are you so calm? The whole yard held its breath. And I gave her the only answer I had. The one I had been carrying across an ocean and back. Quiet and complete and immovable. Because the house you sold was never yours to sell. I let it sit in the warm afternoon air. Then I told them the rest. Evenly. The way you read a verdict you did not write. The forged deed was void. It had never transferred anything legally. The Prescotts had never truly owned it. But they would be made whole. A quiet title action would return the house to the trust. The money from the sale was being traced and recovered. The county fraud unit already had the case. And then, the last part. Grandpa's trust had a clause. He wrote it years ago, sitting with his lawyer, because he knew exactly who his daughter was. That clause strips the inheritance from anyone who tries to steal from this trust. I looked at my mother. Then at Trent. You didn't just lose the house you stole. You triggered the thing he built to stop you. You disinherited yourselves. And then the backyard came completely apart. My mother's tears arrived on schedule. My father stood so fast his chair fell, shouting that I was a snake, that no real daughter does this. Trent had gone gray. How much do they want back? I spent it. I already spent it. I can't. The math of 2 pools in the Maldives was catching up with him in real time. And a constructive trust does not care how many pools the villa had. The aunts who had come to judge me were staring at my mother now, quietly recalculating 60 years of stories. And then Renee came off the wall. She grabbed my arm. And for one moment, her face was honest in a way no one else's in that yard had managed to be. I just needed the money, Brenna, she whispered. Diane said it was fine. She said the house was really hers. I have 2 kids and I just needed the money. I looked at her. I will not pretend I felt nothing. She was the only one telling the truth. But truth told too late is still a forged seal. I know, I said quietly. And I took my arm back. I'm sorry they used you for this. That was all the mercy I had left. I gathered my documents back into the folder, squared the edges, stood up. The yelling kept going behind me. It had nothing left to take from me. So I let it. I walked over to the Prescotts at the gate and told them again, gently, that they would be all right. That Brant would call them Monday. That none of this was their doing. The nurse was crying. I'm so sorry about your house, she said. And she meant it. Which was more than anyone else in that yard had managed. I told her it had always been more than a house. And I left it there. Then I crossed the lawn to the sold sign staked in the dirt where my grandfather used to grow tomatoes, wrapped both hands around the post, and pulled it out of the ground in one clean motion. Dirt scattered across the grass. I laid the sign flat in the dumpster on top of Walter's broken cabinets. Behind me, the swing creaked. WH 1971. Catching the late afternoon light. I took the brass key from my coat pocket. The one he pressed into my palm at graduation. The one that still fit the lock. And I closed my fist around it, the way he once closed mine. I'll see you in court if you'd like, I said to my family, without heat, without turning around. Otherwise, I'll see myself home. And I walked out the gate. And I did not look back. The legal part took the better part of 2 years. Because real justice moves at the speed of paperwork. Not television. The quiet title action ended with a judge cancelling the forged deed entirely and confirming the Mill Road house as the property of Walter Hale's trust, with me as trustee. The Prescotts were made whole. Their title insurer covered every dollar they had lost, and went after my family to recover it. Most of Trent's vacation money came back out of my parents' retirement account. The rest became a judgment that will follow all 3 of them for years. The forfeiture clause held. My mother and brother each lost close to $40,000 they had been counting on. And it went exactly where Walter had always meant it to go. My parents each took a plea to felony forgery, probation, restitution. The kind of public record that doesn't wash off in the rain. Renee lost her notary commission. She cooperated. I asked Detective Alvarez to note that in the file. It was the last bit of mercy I had, and more than she had earned. I never spoke to my father again. My mother sent a 4-page letter that managed to apologize for nothing and ask for help on the last page. I did not answer it. I moved into Mill Road that fall. I rebuilt the kitchen myself, mostly with Walter's hand tools, and a contractor for the parts one couldn't do alone. I sanded the porch swing down to clean oak. And I reburned nothing. WH 1971 was right where he left it. It stays. The brass key hangs on a hook by the green door now, where I can see it every time I come home. I still test the knob twice out of habit. It always holds. My grandfather's forfeited inheritance, the money my mother and brother lost when they triggered that clause he had built. It became the Walter Hale Memorial Scholarship. For kids going into the trades and engineering. First-generation students. Kids who fix gutters and read levels and earn every door they ever walk through. The first 2 recipients started this year. One of them wants to build bridges. I sign each award letter with my grandfather's brass key resting on the desk beside me. Because a house is just a promise you keep to yourself. And so, it turns out, is a name. They thought a quiet woman was a safe one to rob. They were exactly half right. I was quiet. I was never once safe to rob. And the man who knew that best had been gone 14 months before any of this began. and still managed to protect me from across whatever distance the dead and the living share. He built it in the wood. He built it in the documents. He built it in the trust. He just waited, patient as oak, to be proven right. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. And by the way, where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below, because it is truly remarkable to see how far these stories travel around the world. Someone in a completely different time zone, a completely different life, feeling the exact same thing you just felt. That matters. See you in the next one.